All right. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
On behalf of the firm's Black Engagement Network and our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Department, we're absolutely thrilled to welcome you to today's powerful and unforgettable event. It is a true honor to bring you this rare opportunity to hear from a woman whose strength, resilience, and courage have inspired not only generations, but the very fabric of American history. Please join me in welcoming Sarah Collins Rudolph. Known as the fifth little girl and the sole survivor of the 1963 bombing of the 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham, Alabama. At just 12 years old, Ms. Rudolph endured an unimaginable act of hatred that not only shattered her life, but also shook the conscience of the nation. She tragically lost her sister and 3 dear friends in that bombing, an event that would forever alter the course of the civil rights movement. Yet from the depths of this unimaginable tragedy, Ms. Rudolph rose with incredible resilience and has become a living testament to the power of hope, healing, and the relentless fight for justice and equality. Today, we're incredibly fortunate to hear directly from her. This intimate conversation, moderated by our own managing partner of the Edwardsville office, Untress Quinn, will take us through Ms. Rudolph's remarkable journey from the heartbreak of that fateful day to her continued advocacy for racial justice. We'll explore not just the historical context of that pivotal moment, but also the personal sacrifices, challenges, and triumphs that have shaped her extraordinary legacy. Before we get started, though, just a reminder that Ms. Rudolph will be signing copies of her deeply moving memoir, The Fifth Little Girl, Sole Survivor of the 16th Street Baptist Church, immediately following the program. And we do have copies for sale if you were not able to get one. Before we get started, one bit of housekeeping. If you are virtual, at the end of the program, we will have a code word that you'll have to submit to the, put in the group chat, and we'll remind you that word after the program. So without further ado, we're going to turn the program over to Untress Quinn. But before we do that, to set the tone, we have a brief video that we'd like you to watch.
58 years ago today, on the morning of Sunday, September 15th, 12-year-old Sarah Collins and her sister Addie Mae Collins were preparing for a Youth Day service at the 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham, Alabama. They were with their friends in the ladies' lounge in the basement when an explosion suddenly ripped through the church. A bomb planted by white supremacists had detonated just outside the lounge, shattering windows and blowing a gaping hole in the side of the building. The blast was so strong it destroyed the cars parked along the street and was reportedly felt as far as 3 miles away. Most tragically, however, it took the lives of the 4 young girls with Sarah Collins that morning, including her sister, Addie Mae. It was so gruesome that the body of one of the victims was so mangled, she could only be identified by her ring. And though she was only feet away, Sarah Collins somehow survived. Not only was her life spared, but she remained standing through the blast, badly injured, but miraculously still standing. A photographer for Life magazine captured this haunting image from her 2-month stay in the hospital, where doctors removed 24 shards of glass from her eyes, the lone survivor of a most heinous crime. Remember, 1963 was a momentous and dangerous year in the struggle for civil rights. The March on Washington had taken place just weeks earlier. And just months before that, in June, civil rights activist Medgar Evers had been assassinated in Mississippi by a member of the Klan. But the backlash was especially violent in Birmingham under Governor George Wallace. It's where Bull Connor unleashed police dogs and fire hoses on civil rights demonstrators that same summer. On top of that, the city had seen so many racially motivated bombings by then, it had earned the nickname Bombingham. But the bombing of the 16th Street Baptist Church was the first of those attacks to claim lives. And though it gained national attention, it took years for murder charges to be filed against the suspected perpetrators, all of whom were devout members of the Ku Klux Klan. One was prosecuted in 1977, but almost 40 years passed before 2 more surviving suspects were arrested and sentenced to life in prison in 2002. It was proof of the old maxim that justice delayed is justice denied. And it was certainly denied to the only living victim, Sarah Collins Rudolph, who still lives with the trauma of that day. It was decades before she could tell her story, finally publishing the book, The Fifth Little Girl, sole survivor of the 16th Street Baptist Church bombing.
Gentlemen, Sarah Collins Rudolph.
Thank you all.
Good evening, Ms. Collins.
Good evening,
How are you today?
Bliss.
Great. It's truly an honor for me to sit opposite of you and to be able to talk to you. We talk about history, but right now, we are living history with you. So we thank you for coming.
Thank you for inviting me.
So tell us, how was it growing up in Birmingham, Alabama, as a kid?
Well, growing up in Birmingham, it was real dangerous. I remember that. And it was things was really wasn't fair how they treated us in Birmingham. I remember when I was a young child, how when my mother would take us shopping to shop for our shoes, they wouldn't let us try the shoes on. She had to put a piece of paper on our feet and mark the size of our feet. And also, you know, we had Jim Crow laws back there during that time. And the Jim Crow laws was that it was unlawful for a black person to be in company of a white person playing checkers, dice, shooting pool, domino. They couldn't do it with a white person. And also I remember when we was young, they would not let us come into a theater and sit downstairs. We had to sit in the balcony. And when it came down to getting on the buses, we had to put our money in the slot and go around the bus and go to the back door and come in from the back. It was really something that was really traumatized you just living in Birmingham, Alabama, because I remember when we had the white water fountain and color water fountain. If they catch you drinking water out the white water fountain, they will arrest you. So it was a lot of things growing up in Birmingham, and also the schools. We had a school down the street from us, but it was a white school and we couldn't attend that school.
You grab on that mic, grab the second mic. So just so we understand and everybody heard this, you were not allowed to go into the store to try on shoes, so your mother had to trace on a piece of paper your shoe size in order to get shoes that you could fit.
Yes, and we couldn't try the clothes on also in the stores. And also when it came down to the restaurant, we couldn't go into the same door that the white person go in and be served. We had to go through a separate door.
Now, your parents were very instrumental in your upbringing. I understand. I think your father worked at a Joy Cousins Cafe or
Yeah,
restaurant.
Joy Young Cafe.
Joy Young Cafe.
Yeah,
Your mother was a housekeeper.
yes.
Okay, and it was important for you to attend church, you and your sibling.
Yes, we loved church because we would sing in the choir, and we liked going. We went to church every Sunday, and sometime through the week. Mhm.
Now, your parents, were they active in the civil rights movement that was going on at that time?
Yes, my mother, she would go to the meetings every Wednesday nights, and she would always attend every mass meeting that came to Birmingham, Alabama. But my father, he didn't attend any mass meeting.
Because often he would work on Sundays, I understand.
Yes, he always worked on Sunday.
And were these meetings held, where were these meetings held?
Some of them was at 16th Street Baptist Church, and at really around different churches in Alabama, but most of them was at the 16th Street Baptist Church because it would it was a large church and a lot of people would come.
And so the 16th Street Baptist Church, understand was very instrumental in having meetings for civil rights, organizing, such as voters' rights, organizing. Is that right?
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
they would talk about where they would have protests and march. And that was the church that Martin Luther King, he bought the Southern Christian Leadership Conference there, and they would gather together and talk about where they would march on during the week.
And your family were members at the church.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about the church, the members that attended. How was the church? What kind of church was
Well,
it?
16th Street Baptist Church was a church for where the elite, most of the people, the elite doctors and lawyers and principals and all kind of teachers, dentists, they attend 16th Street Baptist Church.
Okay.
But our family was, I think we was on the poor side, so we went there. And I remember my mother, she said she had us in that church so we can grow up to just be somebody. That's what she called it.
Yeah. So at that time, around that time, were you aware of the battle surrounding segregation that was going on at the time?
Yes, I remember it very well because like I said, we live in a white neighborhood, and people would come through the neighborhood. White would come through our neighborhood going to the grocery store, and I remember how they would just treat us, and they didn't treat us well. They would talk behind our back, and I would see so many things that was really going on at that time. How they just treated blacks, they didn't treat us right.
So I want to go to 1963. There was a lot of things going on in 1963, as the video showed. You had the beginning of the year, George Wallace became governor. The summer of 63 was when Bull Connors released the water hoses and dogs on the marchers.
Yeah.
June 12th, 1963, Medgar Evers was murdered in his driveway in Mississippi. August 28th, 1963, you had the March on Washington and the famous I Have a Dream speech given by the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. But also found out that a week before September 15th, 1963, which was the bombing, the city school system in Birmingham had just been integrated.
Yeah.
Do you remember
Yes,
anything about
I
that?
remember that because the people in Birmingham, they got real angry about it being desegregated. And that week, that's when all the white people was real angry because they didn't want black people, children going to the school, and they wanted to keep the schools segregated. Because in Wallace's inaugural address, he said he wanted segregation now, segregation tomorrow, and segregation forever. So when they desegregated the school, that's when everything started happening. It was just the people they was marching, so we could have the rights to go to the white school. Because like I said, the white school was right there in our neighborhood, but we had to go by 7 or 8 blocks to the black school.
And during that time, were there a lot of bombings going on in Birmingham, 1963?
Well, I remember they said it was 50 bombing in Birmingham, Alabama, because of I remember just 2 of the bombing. I guess I began to look it up and trying to find out where was the other bomb. But I know that Martin Luther King attorney, Arthur Shores, his house was bombed. And also A.G. Gaston, motel where Martin Luther King would sleep. they bombed the hotel. And the bomb was going off till they really named Birmingham, Alabama, Birmingham, Alabama at that time. But I really don't remember the rest, you know. And after I began to look it up, I couldn't find where the other bombing was.
So during that time, you were aware of that. Was there a heightened alert to potential bombings?
Well, I remember they said that when they was finna bomb the 16th Street Baptist Church, it was somebody called and said the church was gonna be bombed in 15 minutes. But I don't know how true that was, so
Okay.
that was the only thing.
So I want to go to that day, September 15th, 1963. What do you recall about that day, beginning from the morning when you got up, maybe?
Well, on that morning, we was gonna have a youth day program. And in the youth day program, the young people was gonna take over all the duties that the adults usually do. So we were so excited that morning because we was gonna sing in the choir that morning. So we left home and we walked, my sister Jane and Ed and I, we walked to church that morning. We walked about a couple of miles, and I remember Jana had this little purse, and we were throwing it and catching it, laughing all the way to church. So when we arrived, we went into the ladies' lounge to freshen up. So Jana, she went on up to her class. She was in the adult class. So Ed and I, we decided to just stay in the ladies' lounge since we was late anyway.
So Addie, you're saying Addie Mae Collins was your older sister, right?
Yeah.
She was 14?
Yeah, she was 14.
Okay. So you guys were in the lady lounge.
So while we was in the ladies' lounge, that's when Denise McNair, Cynthia Wesley, and Carol Robertson, they came to the ladies' lounge and they spoke to us and went on to the other side to use the stall. So when the girls came out, Denise McNair was in front of the girls and she walked over to Ada. Ada was like across from me. I was like at the sink and Ada was across from me by the window. So she went over and she said, Ada, tie my sash. And she turned around toward Ada and Ada reached her hand out like this to tie it, and all of a sudden, boom, the bomb went off. So the debris from the window, it blinded me. And all of a sudden I heard someone holler, somebody bombed the 16th Street Church. And that voice was so clear, as though that person was inside with us. But I found out who he was later on. He told me he was one of the deacons upstairs, and he heard the loud noise, and he began to come, just take the steps coming down to see what had happened. But when he began to take the step was blown away. So he jumped down from the first floor, and he looked inside the crater because it blew a big hole inside the walls where they was, standing. So he looked inside, he seen me, he bawled me out. And when he bawled me out, the ambulance was already out waiting. So they rushed me on to the hospital. And when I got there, somebody said that I had to lay on the cot because the eye doctor wasn't in. So while I laid there, Janie came.
Was this?
Janie was my sister, she
Oh,
came.
okay.
And I asked her, I said, where is Addie? And she said that Addie had hurt her back, but she was gonna come to visit me tomorrow. So I said, okay. So they rushed me on upstairs, operated on my eyes. And when I got to my room, my mother was in there and she told me that all the girls in the ladies' lounge with me that morning, they was all killed and I was the only survivor.
And those are the 4 little girls that we've heard throughout history.
Yeah.
And I'll say their names: Addie Mae Collins, Denise McNair, Cynthia Wesley, and Carol Robertson.
Yeah.
Addie was 14, Denise was 14,
11.
11, and Cynthia and Carol were both 14,
Yes,
and you were 12.
yes,
And you were the sole survivor.
yes, I was.
And you actually, with this bomb that could be felt 3 miles away, that also exploded cars that were around the church, you somehow remained standing throughout the bombing.
Yes, I remain standing. I knew it wasn't but God, because those cars that was parked by the church that morning, they were made of steel, and they was total. All of them was total. So I know it was God that brought me out that Sunday morning.
So you
Mm.
you lost your right eye.
Yes, I stayed in the hospital a couple of months, but that week after they operated on my eyes, the doctor asked me, what do I see out of my left eye? At that time, I could just see a little light. And he told me, he said that by me being as young as I was, eventually I would start seeing better. But when he took the patches off my right eye, I was blind in my right eye. So when they began to release me from the hospital, they told my mother to bring me back because they were gonna have to remove my right eye. If they didn't remove my right eye, I would go blind in my left eye. So
And they actually removed dozens of pieces of glass from your eyes.
yeah.
And could you just explain to the audience the type of glass this was? Because I don't think many people know about this type of glass.
Well, this was their stained glass wonder, that in my eye. I still have a piece in my left eye, but they don't want to remove it because my doctor said if anything go wrong and might go blind. So he said if it just ever give me any trouble, they would remove it.
And there were also 2 boys that were killed in this bombing.
Yeah,
Virgil Ware
yeah.
and Johnny
Yeah.
Robinson Jr.
Yes, they wasn't at the church. They was angry and I guess they were throwing rocks, and some white kid killed him, and the police shot Johnny Robinson in his back, and he was killed on that same day.
On the same day.
Mhm.
So after the bombing and you're in the hospital, you have the surgery to remove your eye. What kind of legal response was there after the bombing by by law enforcement?
Well, it wasn't any legal thing because it should have been, but it wasn't because during that time when all the segregation was going on, our governor, Governor Joy Wallace, he promoted all that hate, and also Bull Connor, he was police commissioner, and he rode around in one of those army tanks and telling the police to put the dogs on the people, on the young people, and put the high pressure water on people. So I always look at the fact that they owe me restitution since they promoted all that hate, but they never did give me any restitution for my injury.
And so I know a lot of in times in history we talk about the dogs, we've talked about the water hoses, and I don't think people understand the magnitude of the water hoses. This was the type of pressure coming from a water hose that could remove bark off of a tree.
Yes.
All right, this wasn't just sprinkling, right?
Yes,
Okay.
they did. I remember when they put the water hose on the marches, they just slid down the street. The pressure was just so, heavy until they just rolled down the highway.
So it took years to bring murder charges against the suspected perpetrators. I think the first one was in 1977, and then almost 40 years after that, 2 more were convicted and sentenced to life. Did you testified in those trials? Did you?
Yeah, yes.
Okay.
I had to testify at Robert Chambers' trial. And they knew that Robert Chambers had a part in putting the bomb on the church because they gave him nicknames. They called him Dynamite Bob. And also they knew who it was. The other two men were Thomas Blanton and Bobby Frank Cherry. Cause they named Bobby Frank Cherry, they called him Cherry Bomb. And but they waited 39 years before they brought him to court.
How did you feel that it took so long to bring justice?
I was angry because of the fact that it took that long, but you know that the girls, they didn't even live that long, you know. So they was killed and it was wrong. I was angry for a long time.
Did you feel any sort of satisfaction at all when they were finally convicted?
Oh yes, I was so glad when they were convicted. I jumped up and I hugged Doug Jones. He was the lawyer. And I was glad because it was time. It was overdue time.
So it's taking you, or it took you decades to tell your story. How did you overcome so much to be able to get to a point where you can talk about this?
Well, in 1984, I got my life right with God. And it took me that long because of the fact that I was still traumatized. I had a lot of trauma, you know, and I was so nervous till I was really fearful just really going to school and back to church. I remember my mother took us back in 1964 back to 16th Street Baptist Church, but I couldn't stay in there because I always thought another bomb would go off. So she took us out of that church. So I began to visit churches. I never did want to join another church until one day my sister in 1984, she found a church and she wanted me to go to it. So I went and it was a sanctified church. And I went to it that night with her. And at the church, I began to hear this preacher preaching about being saved and sanctified and filled with the Holy Ghost. So
So when you say sanctified church, that's the Pentecostal church.
yes, sir. So he was talking about being saved and going underwater, being baptized. And, you know, at that time, I was really interested in getting saved because all through those other years, I was trying to medicate myself by smoking and drinking. But all that didn't do any good until God came into my life. And he asked if anybody wanted to join after I had baptized that night in the church. So I remember one day when I was just sitting in the church and he looked over at me, he said, he said, come here. So I went on up and he started looking at me real hard and he said that, I see you're nervous and God is showing me how you've been suffering from a lot of fear. And I said, yes, sir. And he laid his hand, he said, don't you know tonight it's going to be your night? And he laid his hand on me like that and he began to pray. And I just hit the floor real hard. And so when I got off the floor, I was walking in the newness of life. God had took all that fear away from me and all that nervous condition, it was gone. All that drinking and smoking, all that left through Christ Jesus. And I never been the same again. I've been going around now telling about what happened that day and telling people of the goodness of God. Because if it had not been for God, I wouldn't be sitting here now.
Praise.
Amen. Amen. Amen.
There's power in storytelling, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Is there a day that goes by that you don't think about what happened?
No, it's not a day go by when I don't think about it because like I said, when they removed my eye, I have a prosthetic and I got to see that every day. So it's a day I don't think about, but I just thank and praise God that he spared my life. I just thank him every morning that I'm still here. You can talk about the girls because there were some sweet girls, real sweet girls, never harm anyone. And just being killed that way, it wasn't fair for them to lose their life like that.
What would you tell that little girl yourself today?
I would tell myself that if it had not been for the Lord on my side, I wouldn't be here. So now I'm in church. I'm a superintendent at the Sunday school now on the motherboard. And I just thank God. I just thank God for my life. Because it could have been far, would have been far good. But I believe God had kept me for a reason to tell the story and never forget, tell people never forget about those girls because their dying really changed the whole world. Civil rights bill was passed because of what happened in Birmingham, Alabama. And I just thank God.
What do you say to people who say, well, that happened a long time ago? How does that impact what's going on today, or is irrelevant to what's going on today? What would you say to those people?
Well, I would tell them that continue to really protest because I see we have somebody in office now that trying to turn back the hands of time. And like I tell people, we're not going back. We're not going back to that because we come too far now to turn around. And we struggle then, and the struggle is over.
So you wrote a book.
Yes.
What prompted that? Why did you decide to do that?
Because I wanted to let the people know really about what happened, because many people at that time in 1963, they weren't born at that time. So they need to know about these martyrs that they have that died for their rights to have the freedom that they have now. And never forget those girls because they died. Like on my sister gravestone, it say they died that freedom might live. So we should never forget that.
How far do you believe we've come from that area in terms of civil rights and equality?
We've kind of come a long way, but we still have a long way to go. Still have a long way. Because I see some things now through this president that we have, how he's turning things around. And it shouldn't be like that. You know, he should have more love, for one thing, in his heart. Because they always took black people through the storm and the rain. But it's time now that things should come to a change. They already had our ancestors working for nothing. And now they're trying to take us all back again. But like I keep saying, we're not going back.
So what advice would you give to those today who are still, seeking to ensure equality? What advice would you give to the younger protesters, the lawyers or non-lawyers who are concerned about equality for all?
Well, it's always good that we continue to pray. Because as I learned in my church going, God changes things. And we should remember that, because I know when he changed me, that make me know that he is real. Because I was in a terrible condition, didn't get any help, didn't get any kind of aid at all. I had to go through that alone. So whatever they're going through now, just don't forget. Like I tell them, when they tried everything and everything failed, we got to try Jesus now. Because he's the only one gonna help us now.
Now, you mentioned the names of two attorneys that were involved in the civil rights movement in the 60s. What can lawyers do to get involved in terms of legal protections? And do you think that's important?
Yes, it is. Because, so many people now, they see their families getting killed. And when they see these things, they have a lot of trauma. And I really believe that a lot of this come from people being traumatized. They don't know how to help themselves, and they turn out to go into prisons, and they some people, they commit suicide. So I believe that the lawyers should help people, and also we should have doctors concerned more about the young people, because young people is our future, and they should really get involved. Because I see in Birmingham, Alabama, how they still shooting and killing each other. But we don't know why they do this. But like I say, kids get traumatized and they need help. They really do. They need help. And because I know when I was going through what I was going through with I went back to school, I had teachers was angry with me because I couldn't do the same thing that I used to do. And teacher hit me in my back, but because I couldn't get the stitches right, I was in sewing class, and I was going through something. And when she hit me in my back, she called me spoiled, but I wasn't spoiled. I went through something traumatic, and just knowing what I went through, look at the kids out there now. They see their young people, the young brothers and sisters getting killed, but nobody there to help. Just like it was with me. But through Christ Jesus, he the one that helped me go through what I went through with. And they need counseling. But one thing about it, they need to have counseling in schools to counsel these kids when they see their loved ones shot and killed, They need help.
Mental health is very important. Mental health treatment among juveniles and among everybody is very important. If you had one message to leave us with today, what would that message be?
You have to stand up for your rights. When you are going through something and you know that they'll accuse you of something that you didn't do, continue to stand up. Continue to talk to somebody, because our rights were really taken from us at that time. So now you got to stand up and let people know what they're going through now, so that somebody could listen, to them. Don't go through it by yourself. Get somebody and talk to, if it's a doctor, lawyer, somebody. Talk to somebody that could help.
Okay. Well, we're going to turn it over for questions and answers now. Ken?
Yeah, so if you are virtual, if you want to type your questions, if you have any, into the chat box, and then we'll get those. I don't know if anyone live has any questions. Well, let me first, this is George Rudolph. This is Sarah's husband, who's been her rock since high school.
Sarah, talk about how you forgave those clients. I mean, that is very powerful. How you forgave them for what they did to you and your sister.
Oh, yeah.
And you forgave them. You forgave.
Well, I know when it happened to me, I was walking around with a mad look on my face. And I didn't know I was looking like that. But anyway, I would go into place and they would ask me, they said, "What's wrong with you?" I said, "I just look like this."
Yes, ma'am.
But anyway, they asked me that so many times, I know I had to forgive them. Because just having that look on my face, I couldn't continue to go through life like that. So I made up in my mind I was gonna forgive them because God forgave me for what I done wrong. So I forgave.
Yes, ma'am.
Else? I actually have a question, Sarah. When after the bombing and you were taken to the hospital, was that a hospital? Well, I guess at the time they called it colored hospital. Was that a hospital, a colored hospital or a white hospital?
It was a White Hospital, but they had a special place. Like the black was on the third floor, so white. You wouldn't be in the same ward with the white. We were separate.
Did you ever feel like the treatment that you was the doctor who treated you a white doctor?
Yes.
Did you ever feel like maybe that you getting the treatment that you deserved?
Well, I remember he wasn't a white doctor. He was a Chinese guy. Yeah. And he was real nice and treated me real good. And when I got at the hospital, I wanted to really stay in contact with him, but he had this name. I just didn't remember how to pronounce and to find out. You know, I was just 12 years old and I never did keep in touch with him.
After the bombing and the deaths of the four little girls who a lot of people know about, you mentioned that it took you to about 1984, and during that time you might have been drinking, and smoking, things like that.
Mhm.
Was there ever a time that you felt that they were getting more attention than you were getting, and that you deserved more attention?
Well, during that time, they deserved more attention because they was killed. But I would get attention, but by me being so quiet at that time, like I didn't want to talk about it. And when I went to school, and I thought that the children didn't know that I was hurt in a bombing, especially when I went to high school. Me and my husband, I asked him when we graduated, when we met, I asked him, did the people know I was in a bomb? He said, everybody did. And I thought I had got through school without them knowing, but that's what he told me. Everybody knew. Mm.
Oh, good. Did you get a microphone?
Yeah, probably mine.
Yes.
Good afternoon, Ms. Rudolph. It's a pleasure to be here and hear you talk. A few years ago, I heard Doug Jones speak about this case and
Yes,
you
ma'am.
testified. And I was just wondering if you had any things that you would like to share with us about working with him in prosecuting that case so many years after it had happened.
Oh, yeah, I did. I had to testify, at the first one, Robert Chamberlain, it was Bill Baxley. So he took over the trial of Bobby Frank Cherry. So he just wanted me to go out and just tell what I seen, what happened in the latest lounge. So that's what I did. He was a pretty good lawyer. Like I said, when he won the case, I grabbed him and hugged him. So happy because it was just overdue. 39 years, that's too long for you to be free for what you did. So they was free, and I didn't even know that Bobby Frank Cherry used to be in Walmart. They said he was a greeter, and I didn't even know that. So somebody told me.
Awesome.
Mhm.
Mrs. Rudolph, I also want to thank you for being here.
Thank
I wondered if you could talk a little bit about what you recall the reaction from the community in Birmingham being at the time. I know the city was segregated, but what do you remember about how the Black community reacted versus how the white community reacted? And
Well, you know, like I said, I was 12 years old at that time, and I wasn't talking about it, and the people, they was real, you know, quiet about it, because a lot of people was in fear. A lot of people, the young people, their parents took them out of town to live with people out of town, but we didn't have people out of town, so we just stayed in Birmingham. But I wanted to move so bad, but I just had to stay because we couldn't afford to just get up and move. You know,
Right.
we didn't have the money no way. Mm.
I had another question for you. I know that spring, a lot of the school children in Birmingham had gotten involved in children's marches. And I
Yeah.
wanted to know if you remember that and if you and your sister were part of that.
No, we wasn't in the children march, but when I got older, I was with Fred Shuttlesworth, and we would go and get our signs and walk to the courthouse, and we prayed, and he showed us what to do, and we walked to the fire department and we picketed them, and also my mother had a group where Kroger's grocery store, they wouldn't have blacks, and they picketed it, and they closed down and went on. I don't know where they went, but they moved out of that building.
Thank you.
That's what I got a problem with. All what my wife, we discussed it, all what my wife has endured. She never did get restitution. I got a problem with that. Cause she deserved it. Just like Boston Marathon, 9/11, Mother Emanuel, South Carolina. She went through something very tragic. And for the state to do her like that, I got a word, but I can't say it. But now, it's wrong. She deserved restitution. Her mom and daddy died. Waited. They never did receive nothing.
So, so did the state ever talk about providing any restitution to your parents?
I don't even want
No.
to talk about it.
And since we have a new governor, Governor Ivy, she said through the media, she said, "I'm so sorry about what happened to Sarah, and she do deserve a heartfelt apology, but I wasn't in office at that time." So she just said that through the media. So that's all I got from the state of Alabama.
She dodged that question about restitution.
Mm.
She didn't want to discuss that.
I have a question from someone virtual. After the bombing, did your classmates, peers treat you any different? Did they treat you different?
Well, when I was going to elementary school, I used to sit alone in my classroom because of the fact that when they removed my eye, they didn't do like they do now. They matched my eye with this eye. My mother had to go to the store and just pick out one, like picking some up from the drugstore. And it was so big, I didn't want to go out there and play with the kids because I was afraid that that prosthetic would come out. So I was just all alone. I sit all alone in my class.
And I know you mentioned a little bit about the years from the bombing until 1984, when you recommitted to the church. The question is, did you have a support network during that time frame? And could you also talk a little bit about some of the things that I guess you were going through from the time of the bombing through the time you found God? And I know you talked about, some of the activities, but did you ever try to talk to anybody? Was there ever any effort to, did anyone try to comfort you? Like what were those years like, those 21 or so years like for you?
Well, I didn't get a chance to go to college to be a nurse like I wanted to. That's what I always wanted to be because I was too traumatized. I couldn't really think the same way. 'Cause like I said, I was nervous and I was so fearful until, like I said, I would just stay by myself, at 12 years old. That was something uh, that a child should never have gone through a bombing like that. And like I say, I just thank God that He brought me through it because the noise of that bomb was so loud until my husband church was on the south side. He told me it shook their church. And just to be right there where it happened, it had me shook up a lot. And every time I would hear a loud sound, I would jump. And I was really going through that. Every time I would hear a car backfire, we used to have all those cars popping, and every time they make that noise, I would jump. I wasn't the same anymore.
Okay, we do have another question. Go ahead.
First of all, Ms. Rudolph, I would like to say thank you for taking time out of your day, being with us here today. I've read about your story and so many others, so many times, countless times, I can't even remember. Reading that history is one thing, but seeing it, being able to experience it, first of all, there's no American history without Black history. So I want to thank you, applaud you for your strength, your courage. You're sitting up there, a beautiful, flawless Black woman. And if I didn't know your story, I wouldn't know your story. So I thank God for your strength and your courage, because I doubt if there's anybody in this audience today that has not suffered some kind of devastation, but for you to persevere, to be able to get in front of an audience you've never seen, you have no knowledge of, and to tell your story that speaks volume and courage. I thank you. I stand on your shoulders. You're an example and a model for me, and I cannot say thank you is an understatement. But I want to really praise you. You're here for a reason, ma'am. That bomb was felt 3 miles ago and you're still standing. I wanted to say, what give you the courage to keep going? But you answered that several times in your presentation.
Yes, ma'am.
It's our creator.
Yeah.
And you are a phenomenal, phenomenal woman. And I thank you.
Thank you so
We're
much.
forever in debt to you. And if I read correctly, you're still suffering and feeling the effects of medical bills.
And still have post-traumatic
I'm
stress.
one person and I don't have a lot. But if there's anything I can do, anything, please let us know. If you have to go through Mr. Sharpton, Mr. Tread, whatever.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for being an example, and I'm so very sorry you had to go through what you did, you and your family. And I know it's probably still alive and well today, but you are encouragement to so many. Thank you for your work and your service, ma'am. And thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I see your hat says Vietnam veteran. Thank you for fighting for the blanket and freedom of comfort that we all enjoy today. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
The Midwest and St. Louis. That's what we about.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So before we close, we have our managing partner, Rick Engel here, who would like to say a few words.
Thank you, Ken. And Mrs. Rudolph, it was a pleasure meeting you earlier today. It's just an honor. Mr. Rudolph, the same. I couldn't say anything better than what you just said. Thank you so much. But it truly, on behalf of all of Armstrong Teasdale, thank you so much for coming today. You've been an inspiration to every one of us. Your continued perseverance is quite an inspiration to us, and you sharing your story with us is something I know that personally will stick with me forever. I look forward to getting about 3 of your books signed, if that's all right, if you don't mind. 'Cause I have some people I want to give gifts to of that, and I encourage everyone to consider that because it is wonderful. You're a wonderful inspiration to us all. Thank you so much for coming. and seeing
Thank
us
you
today.
so much for inviting us here. God bless everyone that's here today. Thank you.
Right. And before we close, I do have a few more thank yous. Mike Mills, Ken Westerman for all the tech needs, did a phenomenal job helping set up the room. Brian, Rick, without his commitment and support of what I'm trying to do here at the firm and the executive committee, to allow these types of programs and us to learn about living history is important as we guide the work that we do. So I want to thank Rick again for supporting me. So where we are now, we are going to, if you want to get a book signed, if you didn't get a book on Amazon, it's fine. George bought a suitcase full of books.
I want to thank Armstrong Teasdale and you, Mr. Sharps, for making this happen.
Yeah.
I'll never forget Armstrong Teasdale. When I get back to Birmingham, I'm gonna shout it out. Armstrong Teasdale.
We appreciate
Thank
that.
you.
Yeah, as long, and if we can get some business from down, even better. But ladies and gentlemen, I just think we should please give Miss Rudolph a round of applause. And again, if you want to get a book signed, the book, we also have some refreshments and snacks if you want to hang around and get an opportunity to miss Rose. And thank you everyone who's here in the room. Thank you everyone that's virtual who's attending. If you are attending virtually, make sure you put the code word survivor into the chat to get your CLE credit. And thank you very much, everyone.
Yes, sir.